What if the road beneath your wheels could disappear without warning, leaving nothing but an endless drop below? Across this planet, there are places where every step, every turn, and every second can decide whether you survive or vanish forever. From frozen peaks to burning deserts and violent oceans, these routes push human limits to the edge. Today, you'll witness some of the most extreme paths ever created. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Now, take a deep breath, because once this journey starts, there's no turning back. Bernina Express. What if one wrong move could erase you from existence? Located in the heart of the Swiss Alps, the Bernina Express was completed between 1908 and 1910, stretching across 122 kilometers of extreme mountain terrain and climbing gradients of up to 7% without the help of gears or cables, making it one of the most astonishing railway feats ever achieved. Reaching the Bernina Pass at over 2,200 meters above sea level, it stands as the highest railway crossing in Europe, threading its way through 196 bridges and 55 tunnels carved into unforgiving rock and ice. From above, the train appears like a thin crimson ribbon slicing through an endless expanse of white, winding across spiral viaducts that resemble the ribs of some ancient frozen giant. The surrounding environment is as beautiful as it is merciless, where sudden snowstorms, avalanches, and sub-zero temperatures can transform this scenic route into a lethal corridor within minutes. Locals whisper that the tracks follow paths once traced by ancient spirits of the snow, guardians that allow safe passage only to those who respect the mountain's power. If something were to go wrong here, high above the frozen abyss with no escape in sight, would you trust the engineering beneath you, or accept how small you truly are against the silence of the Alps? Kuranda Scenic Railway. Imagine you are standing here, with nothing but air beneath you. Deep within the tropical wilderness of Queensland, Australia, the Kuranda Scenic Railway was carved between 1,882 and 1,891 through one of the most hostile environments imaginable, stretching 37 kilometers from sea level up to 328 meters into the mountains. Built under brutal conditions of malaria, venomous snakes, and relentless monsoon rains, this narrow-gauge railway required the hand carving of 15 tunnels and the construction of 37 bridges suspended over roaring waterfalls and dense jungle ravines. From a distance, the train looks like a long wooden creature crawling along the edge of a living, breathing abyss, clinging to cliffs wrapped in ancient rainforest that seems ready to swallow everything whole. The air is thick, humid, and unpredictable, where landslides and sudden storms can turn the track into a trap within seconds. The indigenous Jabagay people believe that the mist drifting through the forest is alive, home to ancient spirits that watch silently as humans pass through their domain. If the train were to stop halfway across one of these fragile bridges, surrounded by endless green and the echo of unseen creatures, would you stay inside and wait? Or step out and face whatever is watching from the depths of the jungle? Tren las Nubes. There is a place on Earth where nature refuses to forgive mistakes. High in the Argentine Andes, the legendary Tren a las Nubes was conceived in the 1920s as a daring engineering solution to conquer one of the harshest mountain ranges on the planet, stretching over 434 kilometers and climbing to an astonishing altitude of 4,220 meters at the La Polverilla Viaduct. Built without rack systems, relying purely on balance and precision, the railway crosses 29 bridges, 21 tunnels, and 13 viaducts, threading through a landscape so dry and elevated that the air itself becomes a hidden enemy. From afar, the train resembles a rusted metallic creature crawling across the sky, suspended above an endless void of rock and dust where gravity feels uncertain. The environment is brutally unforgiving, with thin oxygen levels that can disorient even experienced travelers, while sudden winds and temperature swings push both machine and human to their limits. Local Andean legends warn that the mountains are alive, ancient guardians that awaken when disturbed, punishing arrogance with silence and disappearance. If the train were to stall at its highest point, surrounded by nothing but sky and emptiness, would you trust the engineering that brought you there? Or realize that at this altitude, survival is no longer guaranteed? Pai Ling Pass. Some call it a masterpiece. Others call it a death trap. Carved into the remote mountains of northern Vietnam between 1959 and 1965 by thousands of young volunteers working under extreme conditions, Pai Leng Pass stretches along a narrow ridge nearly 2,000 meters above sea level, overlooking the Tu Sarn Canyon, one of the deepest in Southeast Asia. The road itself winds like a fragile thread stitched along the edge of a colossal limestone wall, suspended above a jade-green river that cuts through the earth far below like a living vein. From a distance, it resembles a sleeping stone dragon coiled across razor-sharp peaks, its body tracing every curve of the mountain with impossible precision. The environment here is both breathtaking and unforgiving, where dense fog can roll in without warning, reducing visibility to nothing, and loose rock can fall from above at any moment. The wind howls through the canyon like a voice from another world, carrying whispers of those who lost their lives during its construction. Local Hmong legends say the mountain remembers every sacrifice, and that the spirits of the workers still guard the pass, watching silently from the cliffs. If the fog closes in and the road disappears beneath your wheels, with only the abyss beneath you and no sense of direction left, would you keep moving forward, or accept that one wrong turn could be your last? Bayburt D. 915 Road. There are no second chances on this road. Hidden in the mountains of northeastern Turkey, the Bayburt D. 915 Road was originally carved in 1916 by Russian soldiers under extreme wartime conditions, stretching approximately 106 kilometers through a landscape that seems designed to reject human presence. Climbing to altitudes of over 2,000 meters, the road is infamous for its 29 tight hairpin turns, many of them stacked vertically along sheer cliff faces with no guardrails, no barriers, and no margin for error. From above, it looks like a raw, open wound etched into the mountain, a zigzagging scar of dirt and stone twisting violently upward into the clouds. The surface is loose gravel, constantly shifting under the weight of vehicles, while fog, rain, and sudden rock falls can transform visibility and traction into deadly illusions. One miscalculation here is enough to send a vehicle plunging into the abyss below, where rescue is almost impossible. Locals treat the road with quiet respect, believing the mountains demand absolute focus and humility from those who cross them. If your brakes failed on one of these narrow turns, with nothing but empty air beyond your wheels, would you trust your control, or realize that on this road, control is only an illusion? Tianmen Mountain Road. This is where human ambition meets its limits. Built in 2006 within Zhangjiajie National Park, Tianmen Mountain Road stretches just 11 kilometers, yet climbs from roughly 200 meters to over 1,000. 300 meters through an astonishing series of 99 tight hairpin turns, each carved into steep, forested cliffs with almost no margin for error. From above, the road looks like a silver dragon, coiled perfectly around the mountain, its body looping endlessly as it ascends toward the sky, creating a visual illusion that feels both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. The environment is unpredictable, where dense fog can roll in within seconds, swallowing the entire route and turning every curve into a blind gamble, while wet surfaces and sharp inclines make even the smallest mistake potentially fatal. At the summit lies the famous Tianmen Cave, a massive natural arch often called the Heaven's Gate, glowing under shifting light like a portal suspended between worlds. Local beliefs hold that this mountain is a sacred passage connecting the human realm to the divine, a place where balance and respect are the only protections against unseen forces. If your vehicle begins to slide on the final curve beneath a curtain of mist, with nothing visible beyond a few meters ahead, would you keep climbing toward the sky? Or realize that one wrong move could send you falling into the clouds below? Karakoram Highway. The danger here isn't always what you can see. Stretching over 1,300 kilometers between Pakistan and China, the Karakoram Highway was carved through the Himalayas beginning in 1959, a colossal project that took nearly 2 decades to complete and cost the lives of more than 1,000 workers who battled landslides, altitude sickness, and relentless geological instability. Rising to an extreme elevation of 4,693 meters at the Kunjarab Pass, it is one of the highest paved international roads on Earth, cutting through a landscape of towering peaks and deep valleys that seem to crush everything beneath them. From above, the highway appears like a dark scar etched across the pale body of the mountains, slicing through terrain that is constantly shifting and unpredictable. The environment is brutally unforgiving, where rockfalls, glacial movement, and sudden weather changes can transform a stable road into a deadly trap within moments. Entire sections have been wiped out by landslides, forcing travelers to navigate unstable detours along cliffs that barely hold together. Locals believe the mountains are alive, ancient giants that punish arrogance and reward only those who move with humility and respect. If the ground ahead suddenly collapses, or a wall of rock crashes down without warning, with nowhere to turn and nowhere to hide, would you trust your path forward or realize that here, survival depends on forces far beyond your control? Col de la Bonette. It begins like any other road until everything changes. High in the French Alps, Col de la Bonette rises to an extreme altitude of 2,802 meters, making it one of the highest paved roads in Europe, constructed in 1962 as both a strategic military route and a test of endurance against nature itself. Stretching across a barren, windswept landscape, the road coils around the mountain like a dark ribbon, climbing through a lifeless terrain of shattered rock and steep drop-offs where vegetation struggles to exist. From above, it resembles a black serpent tightening its grip around a pale skeletal peak. Exposed to relentless winds that can reach violent speeds and temperatures that shift without warning. The environment is unforgiving, where oxygen levels drop enough to cloud judgment, and sudden storms can erase visibility in seconds, leaving drivers disoriented in a vast, empty expanse. Along the route, abandoned military structures stand as silent witnesses to past conflicts, their crumbling forms adding an eerie sense of isolation. Locals speak of the wind carrying strange sounds at night, like distant voices lost to the cold. If you were stranded at the summit as darkness falls and a storm rolls in, with no clear path back, would you trust your instincts? Or realize that in this altitude, even your own mind may betray you? Leh-Manali Highway. No guardrails, no protection. Just you and the void. Cutting across the high-altitude desert of northern India, the Leh-Manali Highway stretches over 428 kilometers through the Himalayas, reaching extreme elevations above 5,300 meters at Tanglang La, one of the highest motorable passes on Earth, and remaining open only a few months each year due to relentless snowfall and brutal conditions. From above, the road looks like a pale ribbon of dust, winding through a lifeless landscape of rock and ice, a path that seems less constructed and more forced into existence against impossible terrain. The environment is severely unforgiving, where oxygen levels drop low enough to cloud judgment, temperatures swing violently between day and night, and landslides or snowstorms can block the route without warning, leaving travelers stranded in complete isolation. Even experienced drivers struggle with the altitude, where fatigue, dizziness, and confusion can set in within minutes. Local beliefs speak of the mountains as sacred guardians, ancient and watchful, where the wind carries whispers of monks long gone, echoing across the barren valleys. If your vehicle breaks down in this frozen silence, far from any help, and with every breath becoming harder than the last, would you keep moving forward, or realize that at this altitude, survival itself is slipping away? Kishtwar-Paddar Road. This is where the road stops, and survival begins. Hidden deep in the remote region of Jammu and Kashmir, India, the Kishtwar-Paddar Road stretches for over 100 kilometers along the side of a brutal gorge carved by the Chenab River, a route not paved, not protected, and barely wide enough to exist. Carved by hand over generations, this narrow ledge clings to vertical rock walls, with sections so tight that vehicles pass with their wheels inches from a 600-meter drop into the raging river below. From above, it looks less like a road and more like a claw mark scratched violently into the mountain, a raw and unfinished line that seems ready to crumble at any moment. The environment is relentlessly unstable, with loose rock, sudden landslides, and crumbling edges that can give way without warning, turning a simple journey into a constant negotiation with gravity itself. There are no barriers, no safety systems, and no forgiveness for hesitation or error. Local tribes believe the abyss below is not empty, but a silent observer, an ancient force, watching those who dare to cross its edge, judging every step with absolute indifference. If the ground beneath your tires begins to break apart at the narrowest point, with no space to turn back and nothing to hold on to, would you keep moving forward, or realize that here, the mountain decides who leaves and who never returns? Georgetown Loop Railroad. This is not just a road, it's a line between life and death. Built in 1884 during the explosive silver mining boom in Colorado, the Georgetown Loop Railroad was engineered to conquer a brutal elevation gain of nearly 195 meters within a narrow and unforgiving canyon stretching just over 7 kilometers, yet defying gravity with its complex system of sharp curves, switchbacks, and spiraling loops. At its heart stands the infamous Devil's Gate High Bridge, rising about 30 meters above the roaring waters of Clear Creek, a fragile lattice of steel suspended in a place where a single failure would mean an immediate fall into the depths below. From afar, the entire structure resembles a twisted knot of iron stitched into the mountainside, as if human ambition tried to tie the land itself into submission. The environment is unpredictable, with harsh winters, sudden storms, and unstable rock that constantly threaten the integrity of the track. Local legends whisper that the spirits of miners who died in collapsed tunnels still ride these rails, searching endlessly for the fortune they never claimed. If the train slows to a crawl on the bridge, surrounded by silence and the echo of rushing water beneath you, would you trust the aging steel beneath your feet, or wonder how long it can hold before gravity takes everything back? White Pass and Yukon Route. Few people realize how deadly this place truly is. Built in 1898 during the Klondike Gold Rush, the White Pass and Yukon route stretches 175 kilometers through some of the most unforgiving terrain in North America, climbing from sea level to nearly 879 meters in just 32 kilometers of relentless ascent. Designed as a narrow-gauge railway carved into sheer rock faces, it features razor-sharp curves, steep gradients, and towering trestle bridges hanging above icy rivers and bottomless gorges. From a distance, the train looks like a fragile thread stitched across the jagged spine of frozen mountains, where avalanches, blizzards, and sub-zero winds constantly threaten its existence. The environment here is brutally unpredictable, where temperatures can plummet without warning, and visibility can vanish in seconds under walls of snow. During construction, countless workers lost their lives to the cold, falling rocks, and exhaustion, leaving behind a legacy etched into every rail and beam. Old stories from the Gold Rush era speak of ghostly whistles echoing through the valleys, as if the mountain remembers those who never made it out. If the train were to halt in the middle of a storm, surrounded by nothing but ice and silence, would you wait for rescue, or realize that in this frozen wilderness, help may never come? Denali Star. At first glance, it looks beautiful, almost peaceful, stretching across 573 kilometers between Anchorage and Fairbanks. The Denali Star follows a route first developed in the early 20th century to move resources through the unforgiving wilderness of Alaska, crossing vast tundra, frozen rivers, and towering mountain ranges in a journey that can take over 12 hours. Along the way, it traverses massive steel bridges suspended nearly 100 meters above the Nanana River, where the train seems to glide like a bright comet across a silent, white void. From a distance, its yellow and blue cars cut through the endless snow like a streak of light in a lifeless world. But beneath that beauty lies an environment shaped by extreme cold, isolation, and sudden, violent storms. Temperatures can plunge far below freezing, and entire sections of the route are surrounded by hundreds of kilometers of untouched wilderness with no immediate rescue or shelter. Indigenous Athabascan traditions speak of Denali not as a mountain, but as a living presence, the heartbeat of the land itself, watching everything that passes through its domain. If the train were forced to stop in the middle of this frozen expanse, with no sign of civilization in any direction, would you admire the silence, or begin to understand how quickly it could become your last? Kahekili Highway. This place shouldn't exist, and yet it does. Winding along the remote northwest coast of Maui in Hawaii, the Kahekili Highway, also known as Route 340, stretches just 32 kilometers, but feels far longer as it clings to volcanic cliffs high above the Pacific Ocean. Originally a narrow trail used by ancient Hawaiian warriors, it was later widened in the 20th century with minimal protection, leaving long sections barely wide enough for a single vehicle, with sharp blind turns and no guardrails separating drivers from drops exceeding 100 meters into the crashing sea below. From above, the road looks like a fractured line etched into the side of a green volcanic wall, hanging precariously between dense jungle and endless ocean. The environment is unpredictable and unforgiving, where sudden rain can make the surface dangerously slick, and strong coastal winds can push vehicles toward the edge without warning. In many sections, drivers must stop and negotiate passage with oncoming traffic, inches away from the void. Local traditions speak of restless spirits, of ancient warriors still moving through these cliffs, their presence carried in the wind and echoing through the valleys. If darkness falls while you are navigating one of these blind corners, with no room to turn and no clear view ahead, would you keep moving forward? Or realize that here, hesitation can be just as deadly as speed? Dalton Highway. Welcome to one of the most extreme places ever crossed. Cutting through the remote wilderness of Alaska, the Dalton Highway stretches for 666 kilometers from Livengood to Deadhorse, built in 1974 as a supply route for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and quickly earning a reputation as one of the most isolated and unforgiving roads on Earth. Large sections are nothing more than gravel and mud, constantly reshaped by freezing temperatures, heavy trucks, and relentless weather, while a staggering 386-kilometer stretch offers no fuel, no services, and no immediate rescue of any kind. From above, the highway looks like a thin, pale vein cutting through an endless expanse of tundra, disappearing into a landscape that feels completely detached from the rest of the world. The environment is brutally hostile, where winter temperatures can drop to -60 degrees Celsius. Blizzards can erase the road in minutes, and mechanical failure becomes a life-threatening event rather than an inconvenience. Veteran drivers speak of eerie illusions during the long polar nights, where distant lights appear and vanish, as if something unseen is moving through the darkness. If your engine dies in the middle of this frozen void, with no signal, no shelter, and no one for hundreds of kilometers, would you stay inside and wait? Or step out into the cold knowing it might be your last decision? Taroko Gorge Road, hidden deep within this landscape, lies one of the most dangerous routes ever built. Carved directly into the marble cliffs of eastern Taiwan during the 1950s, the Taroko Gorge Road forms part of the Central Cross Island Highway, a narrow and treacherous passage forced through vertical rock walls under extreme and deadly conditions. Built largely by hand, using explosives and sheer human endurance, the road stretches through a labyrinth of tunnels, blind corners, and ledges hanging high above a raging river far below. From above, it appears like a jagged wound torn into the side of a gleaming white canyon, with the road clinging desperately to the mountain as if it could collapse at any moment. The environment here is relentlessly hostile, constantly threatened by rockfalls, earthquakes, landslides, and typhoons that can erase entire sections of the road without warning. Even today, falling debris and sudden closures are common, turning every journey into a gamble against nature. Local stories claim that the spirits of workers who died during construction still linger within the stone, trapped forever inside the tunnels they carved. If the mountain begins to tremble while you are inside one of these narrow passageways, with no escape ahead or behind, would you move forward into darkness, or wait as the cliffs decide your fate? Atlantic Ocean Road. This place doesn't test your skill, it tests your survival instinct. Stretching along the rugged coastline of Norway, the Atlantic Ocean Road was completed in 1989, spanning roughly 8.3 kilometers, and linking a chain of small islands through a series of narrow causeways and 8 dangerously curved bridges built directly over the open sea. From above, the road resembles a broken ribbon of concrete thrown across dark, restless water, with its most infamous section, the Storsasundet Bridge, creating an illusion that the road suddenly disappears into the sky before plunging downward into nothing. The environment here is relentlessly hostile, battered by violent storms, hurricane-force winds, and waves powerful enough to crash over the roadway, drenching everything in seconds and turning visibility into chaos. During construction, the project was halted repeatedly by extreme weather, including more than a dozen major storms that threatened to destroy it before completion. Local legends rooted in Norse mythology warn of Aegir, the ancient sea giant, whose invisible grasp pulls the arrogant into the depths below. If a massive wave rises without warning and engulfs your vehicle in the middle of this exposed stretch, with the ocean closing in from all sides, would you stay in control? Or feel the road vanish beneath you as the sea reclaims its territory? Mauritania Iron Ore Train. This road was built against the will of nature itself. Crossing the vast emptiness of the Sahara, the Mauritania Iron Ore Train has been operating since 1960 as a brutal lifeline between the mining town of Zouerat and the coastal port of Nouadhibou, stretching over 700 kilometers through one of the harshest environments on Earth, often reaching lengths of up to 3 kilometers with more than 200 wagons. It stands among the longest and heaviest trains ever assembled, carrying raw iron ore across a landscape where temperatures can exceed 40 degrees Celsius and shade simply does not exist. From afar, it looks like a massive black serpent dragging itself across an ocean of sand, leaving behind a dark scar that cuts through the golden dunes. The environment is relentlessly unforgiving, with blinding sandstorms, scorching heat, and isolation so absolute that a single mistake can mean disappearing without a trace. Many travelers ride illegally on top of the wagons, exposed to the full force of the desert, risking dehydration, injury, and disorientation. Local nomadic stories warn that the endless roar of the train awakens unseen forces beneath the dunes, spirits that claim those who wander too far from safety. If you were to lose your grip and fall into the shifting sands as the train disappears into the horizon with no water, no shelter, and no direction, would you fight to survive or accept that the desert has already claimed you? Pamban Bridge Railway. One mistake here, and there's no way back. Stretching across the turbulent waters between mainland India and Ramaswaram Island, the Pamban Bridge Railway was inaugurated in 1914 as the country's first sea bridge, extending nearly 2 kilometers over one of the most unpredictable marine environments in the region. Supported by 143 massive pillars anchored deep into corrosive salt water, the structure includes a central double-leaf bascule section that can open to allow ships to pass, a delicate mechanism exposed to relentless wind and waves. From a distance, the train appears like a thin metallic spine suspended above an endless blue void, moving slowly across the ocean as if defying gravity itself. The environment is brutally unstable, with cyclonic winds, powerful currents, and sudden storms that have historically destroyed entire coastal settlements nearby. Salt spray constantly eats away at the metal, while the narrow track offers no room for error when conditions turn violent. Pilgrims crossing this route often whisper prayers, believing the bridge follows the sacred path once walked by Lord Rama, protected by divine presence yet never free from the sea's memory of destruction. If a storm rises while you are halfway across, with waves crashing against the pillars and the train swaying above the water, would you trust the structure beneath you, or realize how quickly the ocean can reclaim everything? After witnessing these places, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. No matter how advanced we become, there are still parts of this planet that refuse to be controlled. These roads and railways are not just feats of engineering. They are tests of survival where nature always has the final say. So tell us, which of these places would you dare to cross? If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves extreme travel. And remember, out there, the world is far more dangerous than it looks.